The slave trade remains the most degrading, prolonged act of human exploitation ever committed. Over the course of hundreds of years, millions of African men, women, and children were kidnapped from their homes, shackled with steel, and forced into labour. There should be no doubt or denial of the scale of Britain's involvement in this depraved experiment. You know, at the height of the slave trade, British ships transported half of all abducted Africans across the Middle Passage. On their backs and from their sweat and blood, vast fortunes were made. When Parliament finally abolished slavery, there were 46,000 slave owners in Britain, who between them held 800,000 innocent people in brutal captivity. An ocean separated Britain from this sadistic industry, but our nation bears responsibility for the theft of millions of people's futures and countless acts of torture, rape, and murder. The slave trade was a hideous crime, one that is impossible to conceal, no matter how far away it was perpetrated. 3 years ago, following the shocking murder of George Floyd, Britain's role in this vicious enterprise was again brought to the fore. What should have been a moment of reflection and acknowledgement instead became fodder for the latest installment in a crude culture war. We were told that questioning the prominence and positioning of certain statues was a misguided attempt at rewriting history. But that process of contesting and defining our history has been in train for centuries. For it's exactly how the effigy of a slave owner, someone who amassed great wealth by inflicting untold human misery, was allowed to stand here in the Docklands in the first place. Indeed, the legacy of Britain's role in the slave trade is felt in every direction we turn. It's in the fabric from which our clothes are made. It's in the ground buildings of the Square Mile in the city of London. And at its most pernicious, it's felt by black Londoners every single day. As George the poet said, whether in diminished employment opportunities or disparities in educational outcomes, COVID mortality rates, or in the Windrush scandal. Not only have our African Caribbean communities been forced to carry this transgenerational burden, but their trauma has been compounded by being denied their history, cut off from their past and told to simply move on. As Mayor, I'm determined to put an end to this systemic racism and historical amnesia. That's why early this year we announced plans for a new dedicated monument to the victims of the Transatlantic slave trade. And this memorial will form part of a wider programme aimed at educating Londoners about our city's shared history. Some people ask why we're doing this when our complicity with slavery has been condemned to a dark time gone by. Well, as James Baldwin once said, history is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. By educating ourselves about the legacy of the slave trade, we learn that civility will not always guard against humanity. We learn the ways in which this shameful chapter still haunts so many today, and of the urgent need to confront the crushing inequalities and injustices which persist. And most importantly, we learn how, while difficult and slow, progress is possible, and that there is no more righteous and noble pursuit. Friends, let me end by saying this. Today and every day, we bear witness to the suffering of millions of innocent people who had their lives destroyed by a violent ideology. We remember them. We draw strength from the rebels who demonstrated immeasurable courage in resisting barbarity. We give thanks to the abolitionists, helping to guide us to the path of enlightenment. And we recommit ourselves to the enduring task of ensuring every person is afforded the unalienable right to live in freedom and with dignity. Thank you very much.